Hi, this is Fish and welcome to Fish Picks. Today I'd like to share with you the contents of this incredibly generous care package that I recently received from fellow US Locksporter Kurt Kiffman. So let's get into it. So I've thought long and hard about the place unboxing videos might play on this channel. If you've subbed for a while, you'll know that I want to ensure that as much of my content as possible is educational. So when I do receive a package of locks, I'm going to try to use it as an opportunity to broaden my knowledge about the items I've received, and hopefully that might mean you can learn something alongside me. This is in part why I won't be opening and commenting contemporaneously. I just don't have the experience or background knowledge to do the content justice. Instead, I'll be opening and researching off camera, and then we'll take you through only those items that I think you might find more interesting once I have something worthwhile to say. And Kurt's gift is a case in point. There are so many locks and designs in here that I've never come across before, and I'm not only grateful that he sent them to me, but also for the fact that he took the time to talk me through each of the items in turn so that I had a starting point for my own research. The first two locks Kurt sent are units I'm already familiar with. We have a Masterlock 410 Lockout Tagout, or Lotto, which is typically key retaining and is a lock I've come to think of as the duck-billed platypus of the Masterlock range, in that it seems to be composed of a really odd mix of elements. It's one of the cheapest and most vulnerable lock bodies in their range, and yet it has one of the best cylinders they have to offer. This one being made up of 6 pins, 5 of which are spools, hidden behind a restricted paracentric keyway. If you are new to lockpicking and you come across this lock, be advised that if you aren't careful, you can end up turning this into a brick and find yourself a member of the infamous Rattle Club if you overturn the keyway. So do a bit of research before picking it. The other item I was already familiar with is an example of my now favourite lock, the American 1100, and if you haven't yet watched last week's episode, please do check it out because I go into detail about how I learned to pick this model. This one, however, is pinned in all 6 chambers, and Kurt tells me it's cut past max, which is normally limited to 4, but 2 of these notches are at 5. MAX is an acronym which stands for Maximum Adjacent Cut Specification, and it's a guideline produced by lock manufacturers to ensure the smooth operation of a key in any given cylinder. If MAX is ignored, the peaks and troughs of the key can be so extreme that they can result in the key being difficult to insert or withdraw, and in some cases can even become trapped in the lock. These tolerances are, however, generous, and so it's possible to step just outside of max recommendations to produce a more challenging picking experience whilst not compromising the mechanical efficiency of the lock. The last padlock Kurt sent me is something I don't have in my collection, a rekeyable Masterlock Commercial 21. The core can be removed via a small grub screw in the shackle cavity, and unlike some of the cheaper Masterlock designs, this has a double ball bearing locking mechanism and is designed for 5 key pins rather than 4. Again, Kurt has worked his magic on this so that it's populated with 5 spools and is keyed past max, which will no doubt make this quite the challenge. Next, we have 3 Mortise style locks, each with a number stamped on the front. These are keyed alike to a Schlage design, and they came with a note from Kurt explaining that this trio have been set up as a self-contained experiment. He comments that these are cheap brass cylinders with low tolerances, and the only difference between them is the way they've been pinned. Number 1 is populated with 5 standard driver pins that came with the lock. Number 2 is made up of 1 better quality standard pin and 4 spools. And number 3 has all ASA driver pins with lengths that have been made to match the key pins so that the spring tensions are evened out. The question Kurt has challenged me to answer is what effect these pinning configurations have on the difficulty of the pick, and I'll be recording my attempt to respond to this question in a future episode. Next, we have a few different models and makes of cylinder locks, which I won't be covering in any detail, but wanted to mention them just to show the range of different lock types that there are out there to play with. We have a visor, deadlock cylinder and a falcon key, which is the commercial version of visor and should consist of all standard drivers. Then we have an older quickset deadbolt cylinder with no key, and despite these being generally considered to be cheap security solutions, the low tolerances involved in their manufacture can make older versions like this a real challenge. This cylinder also came without a key and simply has T-pins written on the side, which hints at what I suspect I'll find upon gutting it. Then we have a newer Schlage cylinder, but in this case Kurt has keyed it for an 818181 profile, which is not typically found commercially, but is a special brew cut for Locksport enthusiasts looking to refine their skills in accessing hard-to-reach pins. Next, we have what Kurt describes as a knockoff Chinese Schlage, which he included in the package because he thought it would make an interesting comparison to the original Schlage cylinder we've just looked at. And it definitely feels cheaper, and I'll let you know how this picks in comparison to the other. And here we have an Everest 29 SL cylinder, which makes this different from the other cylinder locks we've looked at in this package so far today, because this one comes with a key which has some side milling, making it difficult to reproduce using standard key blanks. It also features a check pin at the back of the core, which has to be depressed before the core can be rotated, even if all of the pins have been taken to shear. And now a very special lock, a Schlage Primus, another Everest design with a milled key, but in this case this milling is to accommodate the sidebar which this high security lock has in place. So not only does this have a series of driver pins held under tension by downward pressure on the springs in the Bible, but at the same time there's an additional row of sprung pins that are pressing at a 90-degree angle to the core, which must also be negotiated before this lock will release. This is my first high-end security lock, and I suspect I won't be opening it anytime soon, but it's great to aspire towards achieving an open on this at some point in the future. Kurt also included a follower, some shims, some Schlage key pins of various lengths, some spools including an anti-bump pin which consists of a sprung ring, and some hard-to-come-by ASA driver pins. All of these are so that I can take some of the locks included in this package and re-pin them to test out various configurations. There's one more item in the package which Kurt sent that I haven't yet mentioned, and I saved the best until last because he sent me my first ever custom pick. He calls this design the Swordfish, which is obviously fitting given my channel, and it has a Lawlock Tools Bogota as the base, which has then been enhanced with book-matched Kia wood scales, which are held in place with brass pins and were brought to a fine finish using Danish oil. And the result is a stunning one-off design. Amusingly, when I use this rake, the ergonomics of the handle are such that I have to have the pins facing up, which is the opposite to the way European pickers typically work. And I rather like this alternative way of working on a lock and intend to practice both orientations now. So there you have it, an incredible care package chocked full of new locks and challenges which will keep me very busy into the future. So a huge shout out to Kurt and a big thank you to all of you for continuing to support this channel. Until next time, take good care.